Hi, my name's Jerry Cabazzuto from GodIsLoveTruthLife.com or GodIsLoveTruthFreedom.com because a life without freedom is not worth living. And today I am very pleased to welcome back Devin Brahja Waldman, who just came out with a recent album called Brahja, Infinity Zero under Brahja, Brahja. And he's also the podcaster for the One Great Work Network under archivegeneration.com. Welcome.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, such a pleasure. And you also were one of our Soundpath headliners last year for Apophysis with you and your girlfriend Georgia. And you were also featured, we're recording this the day after Funnel, Freedom Under Natural Law. So you guys were featured there as well.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was great. I was watching Funnel this weekend and yeah, we had one of our songs featured there. Um, but it was a great event as it always is.
Yeah, I just love what you're doing. I think obviously it's great to have both the sort of the podcasting, the research, but also the creative expression, and you're really embodying that with all your projects.
Yeah, I've always been uh I've always been kind of an observer and thinker with regard to our reality and our and so-called politics and kind of decoding that and but um my first love was music, so I never even when I realized it was a responsibility to speak out and share my perspective, um I kept the music going and figured I would just merge the two more than I already was. So, um, that's so I keep the music going. I keep the projects, the ones that I've committed to, and and I just put more into the lyrics, more into the liner notes, uh, to to share a message of liberation, you know.
Yeah, I really admire the breadth of work that you do, and I'm really excited to talk about Infinity Zero. It's such a different project from Apophysis.
Yeah, I brought the or I have the vinyl here to show. Um, Infinity Zero. That's the cover, and then these are the musicians. It's I can read them the names, but that's the photo. So we have Richard May on MPC. He's the one that made the beats, and then I composed the music that was overdubbed over the beats, and then so so it started with the two of us composing the music, and then um, Janice Lowe sings on it, and Georgia and I also sing at times. Georgia Wortel Collins is on bass, Janice Lowe voice and flute. You got Watson on bass clarinet and Alexis Marcello on piano. But but yeah, they're definitely like natural law lyrics in on the record, and it's been getting some play and stuff, so it's a good way to also get the message out there.
For sure. And I remember when I was living in New York City, there's a great jazz scene there. I mean,
Yeah, oh yeah.
it's
Yeah, lot of things going on. There's like many shows every night. And there are different jazz scenes within the scene as well. There's kind of a more um improvised music world and free jazz, um, and then there's also noise, and there's also more traditional jazz, or bebop, and all kinds of stuff going on. You know.
Yeah. My younger brother plays saxophone, so I'm familiar with
Oh
the different
yeah,
genres of jazz. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I was feeling that this was a bit more free flow improvisational, or how would you describe Infinity Zero's feel?
Well, so Richard. So again, it started with Richard actually making the beats. We met in the summer of 2020. Um, there was this Occupy City Hall uh, moment, and there was a lot of protests happening. Let me just turn. Is that better?
Yeah,
Oh, let's see.
it's nice to see your face a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah, I
excellent.
kind of forgot about the light. So yeah, so we we met that summer, and he was staying here for a brief time, and started using the MPC. On the record says MPC 3000, but it's actually an MPC 2000, a vintage beat maker. A lot of hip hop was made on that from the 90s and stuff. So I say all that because it has its roots in that music as well, because that's, Richard makes a lot of hip hop beats, and he makes all kinds of music. Actually, he also plays keys. So, but but then he made those beats in 2020, and I needed time to kind of, I had a vision for what I could compose on top of them, in terms of lyrics, in terms of melodies, in terms of bass lines and stuff. But it took some time to flesh it all out. But then it gets brought into more of a jazz, or what some people call spiritual jazz. Other people don't like the term. Other people don't like the term jazz to begin with. So I don't really know. These are all just kind of loose labels, but it gets brought into that realm. There's definitely a strong improvised element to the music. Um, but yeah, I started writing the lyrics maybe in 2021. Just later, I realized it was the principle of mentalism. But it's kind of like the thoughts you bear, they take you there, or the thoughts you bear, they place you there, um they lay you bare. The thoughts you bear, they place you there, you barely care. Just kind of getting into how we got to get into the roots of our mindset, of our the thoughts we're having, and how they're influencing our physical reality. And do you want your soul? Do you even know? Infinity Zero, because Richard was he came up with that phrase, Infinity Zero. And yeah, it's not even technically a Brahja, because Brahja is a different group, but for the purposes of like online platforms and whatnot, I already have a presence under Brahja, so then people can find it. So the label wanted to put it under Brahja, but it's really the project, and the name of the album is really Infinity Zero, but we just did it like that to make it more, accessible. But Richard came up with this phrase Infinity Zero, and he was repeating it a lot when we were hanging out that summer, like Infinity Zero, Infinity Zero. So I started thinking of a melody that would go with that. And tying it into the what I took it as is like these two kind of incomprehensible concepts, infinity and zero, which are, the infinite nature of the universe, something that's beyond a totality that we cannot grasp, and also this notion of zero, which we cannot grasp, because did the universe come from nothing, and what is nothing, or was it always there, but how could it be eternal? How could something never have a start? It's like this eternal conundrum that we can't quite grasp, but it's getting into the question of God and universe and spirit and natural law. So um and it gets into this idea of the reincarnating soul, the soul that is on this journey that doesn't actually die with the death of the body, and but is has the opportunity to evolve, and but that there's a challenge, I guess, that comes with that, because it you know we have to be willing to self-reflect and self-interrogate on the nature of our thoughts, and our behavior, in order to evolve. So it's dealing with that, and that's the title track, Infinity Zero, and then it gets into seven seven. No, well, no, it gets into song We Just Want to Live, or Electrolytes, um, and that's kind of the lyrics there are kind of self-explanatory. And then there's 777 for all humankind, and Richard also hit me to that. He because he likes to repeat these phrases when you hang out with him. He's very very yeah, he speaks in these kind of riddles, so he was always saying like 777 777, and I was like, what is 777? And he was explaining it to me later, when I discovered Mark Passio's work. He also speaks of 777, and um but it was funny because one time I was walking down the street with Richard, and we saw this huge sign, like outside a store or something, that said 777 for all mankind. um so we would always get these signs, and it was we were get also like, I don't know, barcodes and phone numbers and all these kinds of signs and addresses. There was 777 was constantly popping up. So then, when it came time to write the lyrics and track titles and stuff, that's what we called it, 777 for all humankind. And then it gets into the lyric, government is slavery, government is slavery. And then, uh-oh, why'd I have to wait to find out so late? Why'd I have to wait to find out so late? Why'd I have... And yeah, so it's dealing with the whole album is dealing with this question of spirit, of freedom, of universe, of God, of natural law, and this control system that we have in place on planet Earth, that we could choose to evolve beyond. But it would take some soul searching, and some and a willingness to make that change. And one lyric is, and Janice is singing this one, like, what if we could disagree respectfully? And it's just to say, like, what we could still disagree on anything, really, except the fact that we are not slaves of each other. Like, if we could just understand that and agree on that one thing, that no one is the slave of anyone else, then we could live and let live. Then we could coexist on a basis of respect. And it's just that fundamental respect of each other's natural rights that that is necessary to have like a sane coexistence. And everything else, we can is negotiable. Everything else it can be it could be up for discussion or a debate, or we don't have to all have the same lifestyle or have the same aesthetics or the same opinion about everything, right? um we would just have to be able to respect each other's eternal natural rights as sovereign beings in this miraculous universe. And um then we could co-create a world actually based on justice and freedom.
My heart just feels so warm. I feel so glad to hear you speak these things. It's so gratifying to see another being who understands these concepts and have alchemized them into creative expression. Um, and yeah, I would love to play some of your music. But before I do that, I want to briefly state that I think I just love that you're bringing back the fire, the rebellious spirit, the sort of spiritual teachings into these genres of music that have frankly gone astray. Like rock, punk, it used to be
Right,
rebellious. Jazz used to be rebellious. I remember
right,
hearing Charlie Parker for the first time and being like, whoa, like so different, and
right,
now it's just become like co-opted by elevator music, and like I just love that you're just like bringing that back in because
for
it's
sure.
needed.
Yeah, yeah, I guess what happens is it's the same that happened with hip hop and punk, is like the industry arrives after the fact. There's a creative outburst that happens in this like amazing um sort of collective consciousness that arises within a generation of this sort of opportunity to alchemize sound and in a certain way based on what had come before, and and you keep seeing it happen, and then the powers that be, so to speak, see an opportunity to co-opt it, I guess. And that might sound vague, but it's very well documented, for instance, in hip hop, that like um there those who have ownership of various record labels also have stock in like private prisons and whatnot, and just there's a certain kind of pr- uh pipeline into the prison industrial complex that is has been plotted, and there's a certain they've definitely pushed a certain murder music onto the masses, and it may sound good depending on your aesthetics. I mean, I find a lot of like 90s hip hop to have like the really beautiful sounding beats and aesthetics, and sometimes also lyrically I can fully get behind it as well. There's plenty of that too, but then there's also stuff that you might start repeating. You might start like really loving this song because it's so catchy, so beautiful, but then realize you're talking about like just kind of murdering people, and I think one needs to definitely reflect on the agenda of that and why that was pushed. And then a lot of music you hear today, like I work in in prisons actually, and I work with this initiative um that we create, or we like assemble music studios inside prisons actually,
That's
and
awesome.
yeah, it's been an amazing experience. So I've become familiar with some of the music that's really popular with younger generations, in various cities, and and the there's a certain kind of, and again, not everyone has the same aesthetic, so to each his own, but there's a certain kind of frequency that to my spirit, it has like a certain kind of, like, it's like very like I don't know, like Halloween. What is that, Chucky or whatever, like, who is that scary, there's a spooky, scary, like frequency in the music, and then it's like, there's lyrics like, kill your mother, fuck your bitch, like all this stuff. It's just like, and as catchy as it may be, it's like, damn, what spell casting are we doing? And I try to talk to the folks I meet, like, about, there's an honor to be a warrior in the spirit of self-defense, but if you're just turning on each other instead of uniting against, like, forces of oppression that are against all of you, that, then you're kind of falling into this trap, and so that's one example of how powers that be catch up after the fact and see an opportunity to co-opt music. You can get into it with punk, you can get into it with um jazz is a little different. It's but it's definitely institutionalized, which can have an effect of, like, maybe draining the rebellious or spontaneous aspect. I mean, I remember, because I went to, like, jazz conservatory and stuff, like, some people coming to our school saying, like, the they were treating jazz like some kind of museum piece, that it's already been done, and your job now in your generation is just to memorize what they all did. Like, and one guy, one teacher, he called up, but all the like a drummer, and he said, "Can you play like Philly Joe Jones? Play like Max Roach? Play like um, you know, Billy Cobb, or just like wait, no, Jimmy Cobb." So and and can you play like them? Can you play like them? And one student raised her hand. Is like, well, what about playing like you play? Like, what about, because they brought up Elvin Jones. Like, Elvin Jones's way of playing wasn't popular at the time, or wasn't, he didn't really. I mean, I think he joined the Coltrane Quartet maybe when he's like 35, but he had been playing since he was a younger man, and definitely was on some recordings and whatnot, but it wasn't it didn't have the same recognition as some of the other players in his generation. But now he's known as, like, you know one of the greatest drummers and innovators of all time, because he did his own thing. He had his own approach, um that eventually became so influential, but it wasn't necessarily popular right away because it was unconventional. Same as Ornette Coleman. And and literally the teacher said, he looked at us all, he's like, those days are over. And it's just, and I'm not trying to speak for, I'm not saying this reflects on every teacher in jazz schools, but it's definitely an attitude you find there. There can be this kind of, like, I don't know, weird competitiveness of, like, can you play, do you have all, like, Dexter Gordon's solos memorized, and can you play
Right.
like this, can you play these licks and those, can you play like all these other players? And there is something beautiful about studying the, the jazz masters that have to come before you, and getting into what they recorded, and what do you call it, the terms just escaping me at the moment, but like basically, listening to the record and learning what they play by ear, maybe writing it down, kind of really studying, getting into what they were doing harmonically, and integrating that. Right, there's something important about doing that, if that if you feel called to do so. But it you one also has the opportunity to alchemize that, and try to integrate that with perhaps your unique perspective as this, individuated soul in the universe. Like, you don't just have to mimic, um and content yourself with that. Like, you have an opportunity to express yourself in your unique way, even if it's not the what the zeitgeist is accepting at the moment. And so when the teacher said that, I was like, there's dogma in these institutions. And so,
Absolutely.
there's it's not always like, like the powers that be in some very kind of like the prison industrial complex example is a more like overt example of how things get co-opted by, like, with a sinister agenda to actually like promote people turning on each other violently, and like promoting a certain culture that will like increase the prison population, that will end up like where people can be enslaved within the prison, and their quote unquote free labor be profited off of. um but there's also just the way, um the way sort of certain tendencies, cultural and ideological tendencies, can kind of end up squashing a very beautiful, um, art form and movement, or just limiting it as well. And we on the ground level, do that to each other as well. And punk is a whole other example we could get into. But yeah, and definitely there are plenty of people, or there's some certainly many people that realize this and are trying to not let their art be, watered down. But we definitely need more and more people stepping into their full potential, to kind of to use sound, to use the written and spoken and sung word to kind of reach the hearts and minds of each other, and evolve beyond the mess we're in. And I look to people like Bob Marley and many other artists as people who did that at a very high level. Like, there's a lot of lyrics and quotes in interviews by Bob Marley that um lets me, like, yeah, it lets me know how much he understood the enslavement inherent to government, the mind control inherent to politics, the absurdity of political law. He really got it. He really put it in his lyrics and spoke on it in interviews. And I would venture to guess, and I guess there's some speculation out there, I haven't or evidence out there, I haven't looked into it that much, but I guess even CIA um, confession, but maybe some dispute whether it's true or not. But there's some evidence out there that he was taken out quite early because he was doing this. But in the meantime, he was able to reach billions of people. So it's we shouldn't underestimate the power of art and music to contain a message and to deliver that message to the like the world at large.
Absolutely. I love everything that you said. And sort of riffing off of your last thought, this is why I'm so passionate about bringing visibility to what people do, because they may try to make martyrs out of us. And the more visible that we can get everyone's work out there, um, the less they'll want to make a martyr of us because, you know, it ends up becoming in their effort to silence, it ends up making the music, the art, the work of that person even stronger and louder. And
Yeah.
it actually is, um in their short-sighted thinking. And going back to your album and this thought of like infinity and zero, it's like through, like, they're trying to zero people, but what they're really creating is like this, they're sort of showcasing the sort of eternal spirit of that person and the work that they
Right.
left.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the way I think of it, I often think about what you're talking about there. Also, I was when I was when I realized the extent to which I had the responsibility to speak out, and Mark Passio's work helped me realize that many of the conclusions I had come to were part of this occult tradition that had been occulted, and that there was this, this cosmic equation of just not quite enough love in this world to be free, or you could call it morality, but it's like this basic respect for each other's rights, and the more, there's more this, it's very, I mean, common sense, but the more this um, dynamic grows, the more, the freer we become as a species, the freer the animals would become, because we would extend that love to them as well. And there's not quite enough love, well, not nearly enough love present to be free as a species, or for the animals to be free. Um, like, I mean, I don't know if I would go so far as what James Baldwin says, that there's like the love of a very few people hold all this together, because I do think quite a few people love their kids, or love their family member, love their friends, but that the love we need to cultivate is also goes beyond that personal realm, which is a more cosmic or agape love, of like the love of this opportunity to exist, the love of the universe, the love of the law, right? um and love for humanity, not in the sense of like apologizing for humanity's, the heinous, or the atrocities that human beings have committed or still committing, but the love for the eternity within us, and this opportunity to exist, and this like commitment to speak out to assist in our evolution, right? This is when I realized the extent to which this was the kind of the occulted perspective that left and right, religious atheists, all these things get us away from. Then I fully understood my responsibility to speak out. And because before it was kind of like, well, who am I? Yes, I see the insanity of this. Yes, I have important perspective to share with my friends or whatever, but like to put myself out there, it wasn't even necessarily, well, it was fear too, but it was just of like, it almost hadn't occurred to me that how the responsibility I had, right?
Right.
So when I fully understood that, that was all to set this up, what I'm about to say, then I did start to have this fear of what could happen to me, right? Because I know how powerful and important this message is, right? So then it's like this fear of speaking out, not only what the government could do, but also just what the people around you might think or do, or how they judge you or ostracize you or all these things. And the reason I say all this is because what at that moment I started to feel this urgency to publish anything I could, um, because I understood what you're saying, that the more your message is already out there, the more you're protected from that, right?
Right.
I think when it comes to very, very of like an actual famous artist like Bob Marley, you've already reached billions, and at that point, they calculate, well, if we let you continue, because he would still potentially be alive with us, right? He would have lived through 9/11, through COVID, through all of this, and he could have been a message of like, he could have been a voice of reason in our collective consciousness. But so maybe they at that point decide, well, we got to take this person out because he's already reached billions. He'll continue to reach billions and share this message, and also continue to evolve, right? Um, because yeah, he was quite evolved, but his evolution wasn't complete, like it never is, right? So he would have, I think he posed a risk or a threat to them, at that, but because he had, or I mean, we all pose some sort of threat, but if you've already reached those kinds of that many numbers, that number of people, then I think the calculation is different. Whereas if you put your message out there and are reaching some amount of people, but not billions, right? Then if they were to come after you, attack you, or take you out, they're just going to amplify your message at that point. So that was
Right.
just a kind of, a somewhat long-winded way of agreeing with you that like you actually protect yourself by putting your message out there, and um it wouldn't, if the whole point is to dim our light and to suppress this kind of message, right, of true love, and what would actually, what actually creates freedom in this world, not voting, not any of this, but like actual, like a true commitment, to like cosmic justice. If that has been occulted for so long, and if there's been so much invested in suppressing that message, then it would be counterproductive for those in a position to take a hit on someone, out on someone, to actually do that and just amplify that message even more. And if you're not so afraid of death to like, it's, I think also understanding the transmutation or transmigration rather of the soul, that we would likely just reincarnate right back into this experience, and that death of the body is not the end, then you become less fearful of death to begin with. But it's also true that you are protected, as well, and by this dynamic we're talking about.
Absolutely. Um, Gosh, I really want to make sure we play your music because I could talk to you. You're giving me a lot of thoughts, but let's play some music because I think you're it's awesome. Oh, how do I? Crap! I forgot that we had the same problem during our apophysis interview. I can't share. I have to share a video file only on here. How do I do this? Maybe if I hold on, share screen. Allow. Okay. All right. So are you seeing my screen right now with Infinity Zero?
Yeah.
Okay,
uh
cool.
I'm seeing.
Do you see which song do you want to play? We could play. Do you
Well,
see like my
we could
music?
we could play, The begin we could play like the first 5 minutes or something of the song Infinity Zero. It is a 16-minute song, so that would,
Okay.
but we could play, the first several minutes of it, or something like that, and then
Okay.
fade out.
All right. Sounds good. Here we go. Infinity Zero. Is that coming through? Is the audio
No.
coming through? Ah, crap. All right. Hold on.
We could also put a link if people, we could do it like that too.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. We
It's
we
no
we
it's no big deal.
totally ran into this, and then I remember we like quickly did like you guys did a
Right.
SoundCloud. Um, okay, well we have I had wait a second. I have it here. I just realized I have it here. So if I share entire screen. So if I do, can I play it like this?
Let's see if it works.
Do you hear it?
I don't.
Ah,
I don't.
all right. Well, guys, I'm gonna include Devin's Bandcamp link.
Oh, no
That's a
worries, no worries.
bummer.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
well,
it's yeah, people can, if they're curious, they can just click on the link and it's right there. They can stream it there, they can stream it elsewhere.
okay. I really did try. Going back to what you were saying before, I think about all the truth speakers, all the torchbearers of truth throughout the generations that have, died on the battlefield, killed, like dogs and, on the ground. And it's so important, not just because we know the law of freedom that, as morality increases, freedom increases, right? We want those
Right,
numbers, but also on a scale, it's like if we know that when one suffers, all suffer, and if someone's
right,
getting, picked off on the side because there's not enough of us, well, we need to make their work more visible. We need to sort of think like in terms of a collective, not necessarily, of course, everyone's got their differences and stuff, but like, that's kind of what I'm wanting to do with Soundpath. Like, I don't need to know everyone deeply. We all understand morality and we're all trying to share that with, humanity to remind them of what they
right,
should already know in their hearts.
right,
So yeah, I just wanted to, and I also like to say the powers that shouldn't be,
right, right,
like
right,
in the same way that like I do this too. It's like that was so sick, and it's like, well, why don't we say that was so healing?
right,
Like just being more intentional, because like you
right,
said, like so much of like the vernacular of like, especially certain genres of music and the lyrics, like we just catch ourselves saying these program things, and it's like, let's be more conscious, myself included. Like I'm trying to be more conscious of like the programs in my own language.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Powers that shouldn't be. Or we could now, at the point, maybe with the Epstein files being kind of released, we can now, I started calling them, I mean, a lot of us already knew this, but now it's becoming more commonly understood. So we could call it the pedos that shouldn't be.
Right.
So yeah, we are dealing with a level of evil that I think many continue to underestimate, even after these major events, which, we it's not very hard to find out how much we've been lied to about them. And then with the Epstein files being released, it's like, at this point, if you're not aware that, like, if you continue to ignore the fact that, like, evil is real and is coming for you and is coming for the human soul and wants to enslave and already has enslaved our species, and we've largely done it to ourselves and each other, by, believing in the authority of the ruling class. And but that as unfree as we are already, like it's what the world they're trying to bring about um would involve even more enslavement, you know, even more totalitarian control over your thoughts, your behavior, your words, your spirit. And that's the whole game. It's to entrap the spirit, to control. And you know, if one has been around narcissistic abusers, psychopaths, you realize that there is a certain thrill to be like dangle truth um in front of your victim, right? And see if you can still keep them under your spell, right? So it's like that's total control. That's control of the spirit, that's control of the mind, and by extension the body. But like you can even tell them truth about what you're doing to them and what you plan to do to them. But then maybe later apologize, maybe later try to regain the trust and see if and people will do that. Well, they'll abuse the hell out of you, and then they'll let some truth out about it. And yeah, maybe on the level of like the ruling class, maybe that's a karmic warfare that they understand. It's not only just that I think they would want to, you know, tell the truth so that they can sort of absolve themselves of the karmic blowback of, you know, having mentally enslaved people. So it's like, no, but we told you. I think even more than that, it's to drag you into complicity, to bring you into the hell realm that they're already in spiritually, where you are now culpable as well because you were ignorant. You had the opportunity to know, but you chose not to, right? And then and it's also a flex of total control over you because they can even tell you the extent to which they're evil, and you will continue to support them and you know, like, just it's like people, I think what the I mean, just to kind of go into this for a bit, but like I think part of what the Epstein files shows is that there's a certain level of arrogance or competent or of confidence with the ruling class that they can even disclose this, and people still won't break out of their loop of, well, should we vote for Gavin Newsom, or should we? Or you see, it's all capitalism. We should be communists, or you see, it's all the Democrats. Trump wasn't, you know, bad, or you see, it's all Trump. It's the Democrats aren't bad, or like people just still can still kind of like just take what they want to as a confirmation bias and just keep their ideology intact somehow, and just, you know, rather than let it fully sink in that the very authority that is claimed by the ruling class is totally erroneous, and that we are being entrapped in this, like this karmic warfare to vow continually to people that have already revealed themselves as evil, like I mean, like Biden's the videos of Biden in when he was vice president, like creeping on kids and all the creepy shit he said to children and about children throughout his career, and yet people would just like say, oh, but that's all deep fake, or it's like, it's, you know, but they wouldn't say that about any other videos. It's like, no, but I think that's just, it's all like a, you know, Republican kind of like psyop, that it's not real. Um, but you know, and just not wanting to face the evidence staring down at you, and MAGA does it now with, it's like people still double down on supporting Trump even though he had a 3-decade relationship with Epstein. It's like, yeah,
Right.
what does it take to break out of the spell? And I think that's what the flex is. It's like we can even reveal this to you, and you'll still be in our under our spell, And if you've been around psychopathic abusers in your interpersonal life, you know there's that can be an element where not only do they foster dependency in certain ways, but they will even sometimes let the truth out, and then at some point apologize, maybe as for manipulative purposes, not a sincere apology, but you being an empathetic person might take it as a sincere apology, but it's just to regain your trust in order to string you along for the next con. And
Yeah.
it's on some level, politics is just, like psychological warfare.
I view it like fake wrestling, basically. Like
Yeah.
they're all actors pretending
Yes.
to have beef with each other, but behind
Yes.
closed doors they're being paid by the same masters. And um
Absolutely.
I mean, like you said, it's like going back to, all these quote unquote revelations, which we all kind of knew already. Um, you know, um, and it's like, I really, it's just the same problem. And like, I waffle between wanting to be enraged, like people like, Mark Passio, and then other times I'm like, okay, but like, we can say it angrily, we can say it sweetly. What's it going to take for people to wake up and stop, giving their power away? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe we can put music to it. Maybe we can make art out of it. Like, what's it going to take? I don't know. Just continue living by example. Okay, we're doing that. Like what's it? I don't know, man.
Yeah, I think in what you're touching on is true, that it's just like trying everything, trying all methods, and if there are enough of us doing it, then all the different ways of saying it, all the different tones, all and approaches can be accounted for. Um, so I think all approaches are valid, because something will get through to someone. Some approaches will have better success with certain people, and other approaches will have success with others. But and then there are times when you might have tried everything, and it still doesn't get through, and that's where you can end up kind of very disappointed in humanity overall, because it's just it's ultimately it's not even like there's something really disturbing about our species for sure, but it's also like I have this kind of undying, um, well, let's just call it an understanding that like we are just a very malleable, impressionable species, and if you fill our heads with like lies and garbage from a young age, like that shit does get hardwired into it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't mean that the result we're co-creating now, the aggregate like result, is certainly not the only possible world. And a lot of people that end up, joining some mass murderous institution, killing people for a paycheck, and voting for the institutions doing it, and all this stuff, like they easily could have had a totally different life. And you know, and it's just that once you hardwire that programming in from a young age, it's much harder to undo it. But if we didn't do that to begin with, if the parenting, education, everything could shift to begin with, then we could spare the next generations of that programming, and then we would end up with a much better result, because it's not like everyone who ends up condoning or doing evil shit is just inescapably evil. It's just like it becomes the norm to think and behave in certain ways that are actually like like we might internalize a high degree of psychopathic kind of reasoning without being necessarily like just like inescapably psychopathic or something. It's just like you had the opportunity as a child to like actually grow up to be a really kind person and stuff, but you got sold a false bill of goods and whatnot, and then it's maybe just too much to understand that like your parents were deceived, your clergy were deceived, your like school teachers were deceived, the media was deceiving you. All this shit is just like your whole society and culture is like fuck. Like it can be a lot to just like stand against all that. So, but if I guess where we're at is if just enough adults could deprogram themselves, then they
Right.
could spare the next generations. But we can't get to sparing the next generations of that programming until enough of us choose to deprogram. And that's kind of, I guess, where we remain stuck. That the ego is attached to the programming because it's hard after, I guess, especially after decades of doubling down on stuff, to like admit that it was all like that you were mistaken the whole time, and that you it's embarrassing. It's like, wow, I really got fooled, and also perpetuated that to others, and now I have to look at that, and that's painful. And it's like somehow so simple, like just to the willingness or unwillingness to do that work, and the fear of pain that prevents that shift in evolution, that ends up, it's like perpetuating this whole thing, because then we just program the next generations and repeat the cycle, and it's like the abused become the abusers, and we just can't break out. But on some level, I always remind myself of like the inner child within us, that there was a possibility for us to, for almost all of us, unless you're like born with a actual defect where you can't experience empathy, and you're just like born a psychopath, which is like not by no means the majority of the human race. There is that potential for goodness within us, that I'm always trying to kind of think about how to speak to that within the other person.
Mm, I love that. I'm hearing you um, talk about recognizing the shame, the guilt within oneself, in that inner child. And then once that is sort of parented and healed within, noticing that in others and holding a sort of like empathetic space for that. I think that's so important.
Yeah, and it's certainly, it's there's highs and lows, there's moments of extreme frustration as well, because it's again it can feel like almost, I don't want to say it is impossible, because I don't think it's impossible, but it can seem that way at times, like there's like this brick wall that you're trying to get through. That's like there's like this army of like thought police, like that are like shooting down any kind of invading thought, any contradictory thought to your ideology. It's just like, or like this amazing ability to just ignore and deflect. And it's like, damn, like what? And then there's moments where it's like, oh no, I think I really got through to someone. And then you see something they post online, you're like, no, you don't fucking get it still. Like, like like I thought that seed was planted. I thought you understood. And then
Yeah.
it's like, but then you fall for like like the same trap that's been rebranded. It's like you see people fall for it all over again. It's like, damn, what does it take? But it doesn't mean, even that, it doesn't mean that the seed wasn't planted. It's just like you have to double down on your efforts to remind people again and again and again. But yeah, it can be like maddening, how thick this programming is,
This
or it can be.
feels like this feels like a spiritual adult therapy session when
Yeah.
we're just like commiserating about raising humanity's consciousness, and like they just refuse to grow up, and we're trying our best, and it's difficult. But yeah, I'm so grateful to have connected with you and with Georgia and just everyone through Soundpath and just in our community in general. Um, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And also and then the other part, just to kind of uh you know not leave this part out, is the also like that like being just as brutally honest inwardly as well, and not
Yes.
and then like which that can also um that also has its frustrations and ups and downs, because sometimes it can be it hard to know um if you're being like, sometimes you can kind of go overboard if you're very like if you have a high standard of for yourself as being like, you know like a good person and stuff. Like it can it's easy to kind of get obsessed, or like get too much enmeshed in shame and guilt. And if you didn't if what you said wasn't up to your standards, or what you maybe even said like, years and years and years ago, it can you can kind of get hung up on that. But then it's also just as dangerous, if not more, I would say more dangerous, to not even concern yourself with that, and just like never let your past catch up to you, and just keep going, keep going, keep going, and never, and just ignore anything that doesn't sit right with you in your conscience. If you were actually like, just stop whatever you're doing and let it all catch up and let it sink in. Um, so I, there's I guess some sort of balance to strike of like, um, being holding yourself accountable and being brutally honest, and yet not like letting guilt or self-hatred just like totally ruin you, for things that like, in the grand scheme of things, weren't, um like, are forgivable. Like it's I mean, it depends what we have on our conscience, because some people have done things that aren't really very forgivable on some level. Like, it's like, if you like, I don't know, if you do, there's a lot of shit that, like, it's not like you can just be like, well, that was then and this is now. It's like, well, no, it's like you really fuck people, a lot of people's lives up, or you like, just you went on a killing spree working for the military or whatever. It's like, that can really, it's heavy shit to have to deal with. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, there is an opportunity to like, um there is an opportunity to warn others, and to do right by others with the time you have left, and to hold yourself accountable, and try to warn others, that so that they don't fall into the same trap. And I have, like, as much as I understand that the agents of the state keep us stuck in this condition overall, I also understand that a lot of them just like got led into it as very young people who, have been brainwashed by culture and society and their parents and whatnot, and were told like, yeah, that's what, go be a hero, and then end up having, all that blood on their hands. And it's like, damn, I have empathy for that. And I know how fucking terrifying it would be to try to face that without, just descending into total chaos, inner turmoil, and but actually being able to like sit with that and say, okay, well, I understand this now, and I'm gonna help warn others so that they don't fall into the same trap. Like, It's very, very challenging to a spirit, right? That once again had this opportunity at birth to like not do any of that shit, but just got led into it. So, and that's a spiritual enslavement that has been going on for thousands of years of how to mold people into your like your into like your mental slaves that will do your bidding for you and actually perpetrate physical enslavement for the species. So that's just one example of what the moral injuries people have done to themselves, and not to mention the injuries they've done to others, and that's a lot to try to come out of now that we've gone down that road. It would have been better to avoid this, but a lot of wrong turns have been taken in thousands of years of people doubling down on this madness, and now there's a lot to try to heal. But so yeah, it's intense. Shadow work is intense. Like, and even if it's not that heavy, just like saying something or doing something that wasn't right. Like it feels heavy. It's obviously it is, and so it takes it. I think it's just a matter of like um being committed to it and processing it over time. Um, but yeah, this is we as a species have like gone down a very fucked up path in a lot of ways, not just like what we've mentioned, but also condoning shit we've condoned and like doing all kinds of shit, treating each other badly, be like people like do all kinds of fucked up things. And it's heavy to face that and to especially like see yourself naked before like the universe and nature and sit with like your culpability um in before the before creation. um that's heavy shit, but that's unfortunately where we're at. Like that is the necessary work. And you know assisting each other in that process is you're going to get a lot of blowback. You're going to get a lot of people who are like fuck you and whatever, because a lot of people don't want to do that work.
Absolutely. I know we said it is an hour, but this conversation's so fucking gold. Do you want to make it like till like an hour and a half? Just because I really
Yeah,
want to
sure.
add, yeah, that so I love that you're working in the prisons. I have a calling to do that as well. I'm training to be a meditation teacher right now. Because I think using meditation as a vehicle to teach natural law to people, and what better way to teach morality than to people in prisons? I mean, they're literally there. There's no, comprehensive rehabilitation program for these people, and it's like they're there, and they're probably going to be receptive to this sort of messaging, to the need for shadow work, to the need to, incorporate natural law in one's thoughts, emotions, and actions. Um, and even if there's a situation where they weren't culpable, or if they were just in there because of a bullshit law, like that is also teaching, and an opportunity to sort of ignite them into action once they get out. Um, and even if they don't get out, there are collective actions that they can take within, and so I think just I'm also thinking about the veteran population. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but I've gotten to understand that personality type a bit. And, people enlist into these things because they're already in a self-hatred sort of situation where they're like, I don't give a, you know, fuck about my life. I'm just going to like, sacrifice for the possibility of making a bunch of money and just not caring about who they tell me to kill. And it's like you can't have a love within yourself to then be able to do that, to be an order follower like that, right? And so that's why I don't think it's all that surprising that like when they come out of war and they're like there's a high suicide rate, there's a lot of depression, and just like that was there before the war, and it just was exacerbated. And so I'm seeing all these oftentimes fatherless men going into, service, and then they come out and they're like, I still don't have, like, stable parent figures in my life. I still don't have love for myself. Yeah, I got the money, but now what? It's like and so there also, I think, if we can get to these ex order followers and ignite them, like they would be very powerful messengers of natural law. So I'm really thinking about them. I'm also thinking about, young people like Gen Z, college students with Corey. Like when you talk about natural law to them, they're in the middle of like facing immense amount of debt for their education to be a like worker slave.
Such a
You've
scam.
been
Fuck.
academia. Yeah, and it's like, I mean, like you, I studied art in academia, and I was like, this is such a fucking pyramid scheme. Am I supposed to like aspire to like get a doctorate to then like be tenured to then like do this all over again to museumify art? Like I don't want to be part of this institution either. So it's like, anyway, long story short, like I think there's just so many like populations that we could target for this messaging. And like I'm really trying to just like instill the need in everyone to just like activate in your communities, activate in the communities that you're already interacting with.
Totally. Yeah, it's I've asked when I go into prison sometimes I've talked about um I've expressed it as karma. Um and you kind of sometimes, when you ask people what they think of karma, sometimes they'll express this sort of weaponized uh definition. You've seen it also with like around like caste systems as well, of like, oh well, that's just your karma, to be oppressed, and that must be, kind of God's way of punishing you, for something you did in the past life or whatever. And people can sometimes conceptualize it as like revenge, cosmic revenge, but it's um that leads us kind of away from the simplicity of just cause and effect, and it's difficult to navigate this, or it can be challenging to navigate that discussion also with people that are locked up, because it's not just about, it's not just about what they may have done and what they may have be culpable for, because surely people who do get locked up, some amount of them are definitely, sorry, there's a lot of noise. Um, some amount of them are um have done shit that they shouldn't have done, that was harmful. A lot of that is coming out of like the scarcity and, economic warfare that like pits people against each other, and various ways of, of mind control and, whatnot that goes into also trying to capitalize on division and pitting people against each other. So there's that cause, and then you're caught up in that, and then acted in a way that was harmful, and then you get brought into jail where you can, be exploited. Well, I mean, it depends, but oftentimes there is very much an element of monetizing people's labor. Um, and so it's what I was trying to say is, it's like, it's not trying to lay a guilt trip on you, like you deserve this, you're in this prison because of you're bad and you need to repent. It's not as simple as that. Like, people are getting set up, and and but at the same time we also have to hold ourselves accountable to doing bad shit to each other, and what the chaos that causes, even if you get away with it in terms of the legal system not catching you, or you're still contributing to this overall result of chaos and slavery in in our world. So and trauma and suffering, right? Because if you join a gang and it's like you have to kill for clout, or you're like, I mean, the people are like joining gangs as young as 12 and whatnot, and it's very much like the cult of the military, where you're like
Yeah.
you're in this groupthink dynamic where if you go against the group, you're you'll be ostracized and humiliated and all this. So, but what I try to express is that it's actually true courage is to come out of the cult and actually speak about healing and love, and like that actually takes courage. Whereas people so often see that as weakness, because we record music and we don't want to release it if it's like perpetrating culture of murder music, also knowing that it can really end up bad for those who record it. Like you can if you're bragging about like being involved in some killing and that's released, like that's someone might you know take a hit on you, right? Like there's all this like stuff really goes on, obviously. So we want to help break the cycle, not perpetuate the cycle, but it's also not be so presumptuous as to expect people to like just get on board with that immediately, because it does, like, I know this is people's lived experience, and there is this like this dynamic of people internalizing this idea that it's weak to be emotional, right? So there's a lot to kind of navigate there, and also to bring it to the societal level and the slavery system of our world, how much people are being played and put into that position. um and and then, as you said, a lot of people aren't even in jail because of something they did that was actually harmful, like, if you yeah, drug possession, or sometimes you end up there because of you were acting out in school, or sometimes like, and then one thing leads to another and you get there, or sometimes like owning a weapon, and it's like, well, the police own weapons, and they came in with their weapons, enslaved you, abducted you, and threw you in a cage because you own something they have. It's like, what's with this double standard? It's like, it's a lot of shit that where you haven't even harmed anyone, um, but the legal system deems that punishable, and now you've been enslaved and encaged on that basis. Um, and there is also the worshiping of weapons as like you want to use it not in a spirit of self-defense, but actually just to like be the toughest gangster, that needs to be examined and looked at and healed. But at the same time, like, just the very act of owning a weapon is not actually a transgression of natural law. Like if you haven't murdered someone with it, then you should not be obviously, then you have not revoked your right to live unharmed, right, and free. Like you have, and like I was in jury duty. I wasn't chosen, but like this guy was being sentenced on the basis of owning a weapon that was not registered, and cannabis possession over the amount that your like daddy government allows you to have. It's like the amount of people that get dragged into cages on things that are not actually violations to other people's right is astronomical as well. But also, to tie it into what you were saying, like, um, I think, and what we were saying before about conscience, and like the conscience thawing and the pain of that, and I well, we have a lyric in Apophysis that's like, if it stings, it's working. If your heart, like, what, I forget the whole, if it stings, it's working. It's like this idea that the pain that you experience with is evidence of your conscience being there, right? So it's actually, it's as painful as it is, it's also like, um there's a silver lining in it. It's actually good that you have that heart within you to experience the suffering that now that you have caused someone else or have caused yourself and others, like to sit with that and experience that pain means that you have a conscience that is still working to some degree, but it's just, it's going to be painful to realign yourself to that. But it means that love is within you, and and but it can be very painful to realign yourself to that force if you have been living out of alignment to it, or out of alignment with it.
Ooh, wow. Like mic drop. That was amazing. I definitely um agree that um that that pain, that grief is the sign of care. And if, I think about, because I have two sons, especially men are socialized to not feel,
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
important it is to incorporate things like music, art for creative expression and also emotional expression for kids. Of course, for girls, but as well as boys. Like, I just think it's so important for people to just like develop a practice of emotionally expressing, because if you're constantly being told by society to bottle it in, to doom scroll it away, like you're never going to feel those feelings. And that's so important, to feel those feelings, including the painful ones, not escaping, just sitting with it, holding space for it, alchemizing it like into right action. Like these things are so important. Like what you're talking about is like the heart of the issue, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, literally the heart of it. Yeah. And yeah, again, if we just, if we could avoid all this by like, by, if this is what was taught as the norm, that you can, there's we have the free will to choose, but we're not going to escape the psychological, physical, emotional, mental consequences of attacking the love force within ourselves and each other. Like you can't escape the chaos that that will bring about. You can do it, and we have again and again. We have, this is a free will universe where, like, there's not some like micromanaging force within nature that's going to swoop down and intercept your punch if you want to beat your children or beat your wife. Like, you'll probably land that blow, right? And this universe didn't make you as a slave to the universe where you can only do as the universe wants you to do, right? Then you wouldn't have free will. Then you would be a slave of the universe who could do no wrong. But no, you have to choose. You would have to actively choose that for yourself. And so you'll land the blow, but you won't escape the consequences. You won't. Like, even if the law, blah blah, blah, the justice system, quote unquote, doesn't catch you, even if you are the architect of the justice system, you like, even if you don't, if you, even if you're fully psychopathic and don't experience guilt and don't have any conscience there to like to feel that pain, that in itself is spiritual hell. That is the worst place to be, because you like, people might think, oh, they're getting away with it because they don't feel guilt about it, or they're not going to spiritually suffer. Like, that means they have zero fucking love within themselves. Which, and imagine just dwelling in that state. Imagine how fucked up your whole psyche is at that point, where you have no conscience at all. And that is certainly nothing to strive for, because that, and I feel like that's where they're trying, like those who misery loves company, right? Like those who are in that spiritual state want to drag everyone else down there with them. Um, so yeah, um that's certainly not something to aspire to, or to you're certainly not like the one winning if you have zero love within your heart. Like you might make the billions, you might enslave the world, you might be able to drink children's blood and like whatever, and laugh at how much you fooled everyone and whatnot. But like, I would not trade places with you for anything. Like, I don't like being the slave master. That's the last place I would want to be. Um, because your soul is so fucking warped at that point. Like, and it's not only like within this realm, but like considering what might happen after the death of the body, and how your spirit will flow. And like, I really wouldn't want to be on that fucking karmic trajectory. So better to experience the pain and suffer as your conscience thaws, than double down on some psychopathic shit and just kill your own conscience.
Absolutely. Ooh, yeah. I think you're really hitting just you're getting to the root causes. You're talking about how even those in the controlling class are still enslaved by the master
Yeah.
slave dialectic. You're not, by
Yes.
being an owner or a master, you're not free from that. You're
No.
actually, it's the most karmic debt, and it's the most spiritual, just dying of the conscience. It's like,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think that, yeah, let's sort of bring it all together. So, if folks want to check out Devin's work, again, that's archivegeneration.com. He also has a Bandcamp where you can buy his album. It's brajawaldman.bandcamp.com. You can check out the Infinity Zero album there. And you're also on the One Great Work Network. And you're also one of our Soundpath artists. I would love to have you back this year again, whether it's
Totally.
whatever project you want to do, however you and Georgia or whoever you want to involve. Like,
Sure.
I love what the creations that you and the folks that you work with are making. So
Appreciate that. Yeah, I'd love to be a part of it again. I know Georgia would as well.
excellent.
So totally.
Awesome. All right. Take care. Thanks,
Take
everybody.
care. Yeah, thanks for having me on. See you